Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Good morning. Today is the 4th day of the month of Adar. Means Purim is in 10 days, Chavra. Get ready for Purim. In today's lesson, a person who is not fighting their own inclination at their battle point, be it in resisting even subtle evil or doing good beyond one's comfort zone, does not understand the sinner who fails their own inner temptation, even if on a different scale. So instead of yesterday was all about stop looking at anybody else. You can't judge them because you can't put yourself in their shoes. It's impossible. But now we're taking it one step further. All right, we're in the Chayenu, page 95. Let's go. We're in the middle of chapter 30 in Tanya. Anyone who has not attained this standard of waging such a strenuous war against his body, against his nefesh habahamis, his natural animalistic tendencies and desires, is not measured up to the quality and dimension of the war waged daily within the kalsha bekalim, the weak against the evil in nature, which burns like a fiery flame, so that it, which is the powerful evil impulse, be humbled and broken through the fear of Hashem. So this then is the standard by which everyone should judge only themselves. Do you battle against your evil impulse during davening and similarly in other areas of divine service that the Alter Rebbe is going to soon discuss, as intensely as the Kal Shabakalim must battle against his? A person who's weak in certain areas and you're ready to judge him, but meanwhile, he may actually be succeeding in his battle, but it looks like he's on a much lower level because he's doing all these things. Yeah, but he didn't do such and such, which to him was a huge accomplishment. And for you, you're davening, you're learning, you think you're all this, and you're not putting up a strong fight when it comes to something that you shouldn't be doing, or something extra that you know you could do, but you're like, not today. What about when you're benching? Or you're saying the brachas before eating? Or all those other mitzvahs? It's easy to, did you bench? Listen, I was in a rush. Whatever. I said, brich. Brich rachamana. Brich rachamana. Or you didn't have in mind, you weren't thinking about Hashem. You weren't doing it for the right reasons. Instead, you were doing it because you felt guilty or whatever. Let's just get it over with. What about if you have the opportunity to learn, but instead of learning, good morning, Charlie, but instead of learning, you're like, you know what? I'd rather watch a game. I'd rather play this. I'd rather do that. There's so many other distractions. Today, we'd like to think that today, because of the phones, there was always other distractions, and there always will be. But you have a chance to sit and learn. But instead, you gave up. You didn't even fight the fight. When it comes to studying a fraction more than one is supposed to, all it is just stay a few more minutes. Where are you rushing to? Not you guys. You guys are all here. But I'm talking about the others. Like, I got to go. Now, if you have to go and you're late, okay, it's a different story. But if you have a few extra minutes and you have an opportunity to learn Torah and you're like, but if I go to the car, then I get the... So that's the question. And again, don't judge others. It's not, you have no idea what's going on in his mind and his life. Talking about yourself. The if you have the ability to fight, or to wait a little bit longer, or to say a bracha, or to sit down and bench properly, and you're just like, on the way out the door, I'll bench in the car. And then in the car, you're in the middle of benching, you get a phone call, you pick it up, you forget the second half of benching. I don't want to translate what the Alter Rebbe says here. I just don't want to, okay? I'll say it again in Hebrew, but you can figure it out. Rosh Gomer. Similarly, unless one struggles with his evil impulse to study more than he can. J. Weimerger's calling. What's the difference between the category of pushing away evil and doing good? What's the difference? In which he fails by neglecting to observe. So, we're always going to focus on, don't do that. It's a terrible thing to do. Don't do that. It's terrible. It's not good for your neshama. But what about the mitzvahs that you have an opportunity to do, or the extra learning that you could do, or the tzedakah that you could do? You just, you don't want to, you don't like to, and you're not really putting up much of a fight against your Yetzer Hara that's saying, don't worry about it. Somebody else will give it. Somebody else will learn, or whatever, you'll learn tomorrow. There's always tomorrow, right? Both are commandments of Hashem, whether you're staying away from doing something evil or adding on a little extra learning. All mitzvahs, but especially giving tzedakah, money that involves money. This labor of giving charity. Even in the category of surmeira, which is pushing away the evil thoughts and impulses or the aveda that you may have done, every thinking man can discover within himself that he does not turn completely and totally away from evil. Don't look at that. He takes a little peek. Don't do that. You can't have any benefit from this. But it smells so good. Don't even smell it. In a situation that requires a battle of the level, meaning the magnitude described above, the battle required of the Kalsha B'Kalim, or even a situation requiring a battle of lesser magnitude. For example, let's give an example what the Alter Rebbe is talking about here. Let's say you're in the middle of talking, okay, it's the middle of davening and your friend walks in and says, did you hear about such and such? Did you hear about so-and-so, what happened to him and, his business? And you're like, knew what happened? And then you're like, wait a second, that's none of my business. Actually, the other guy's speaking Lashon Hara. Stop. I don't want to hear. Or if you're the one saying it, it's so hard. The guy's like, yeah, oh, by the way, did you hear about such and such? Tell me more. Imagine you have to stop yourself in mid-sentence because you realize it's not the right thing to say. It's very difficult. Some person will say, hey, he got himself into a little trouble, but I don't want to say anymore because it's Lashon Hara. You already so that's the idea that the Alter Rebbe is trying to give us. Like, you're careful what you do and what you say, but you toe the line and you crossed over a little bit. Again, judge yourself critically, not anybody else. Somebody else does something, that's his business. As he ought to do, even if it's a very slight slur, and even if it's true, and even though his purpose is relating to exonerating himself, you could say, yeah, but it wasn't me. I wasn't part of it. No, don't say anything. Walk away. It's known from what Reb Shimon said to his father, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Lav ana kasbei ela Yehuda chata kasvei. V'amar loi kalech milashon hara ayin sham b'gemara reish perik yud Baba Basra. There's a story from Tractate Baba Basra, beginning of chapter 10, that Reb Shimon said to his father, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, concerning a problematic bill of divorce that was improperly written. I did not write it, and Yehuda the tailor wrote it, where the slur was a minor one and the purpose was self-vindication. And his father replied, keep away from slander. Very interesting. Last night I was on a shir. Rabbi Kazimov was giving a shir online, and he said there was a situation where someone would go around and he would check that everyone was saying Tehillim, because as I mentioned when we were saying Tehillim, that we should all say it together, and that's you need at least a Roiv Minyan to say the Tehillim in order to say the Kaddish after. That's how we say the Kaddish. Like on Shabbos Avarchim, you need a group saying it together. Even if you have 10 people, it's not enough that one person saying it. Okay, we can get into the nuances if the Chazan thing and he has everyone in mind, but that's not for now. But the point is, he said he was in one shul and he says, I'm not going to say which shul, I'm not going to say which person. Like he was very, very clear. It's just the idea that someone was going around checking everyone's books to make sure that they were all saying Tehillim and they were all on the right page together. He felt that was a little excessive. He was very careful not to say. Another example that he gave was a bacher who just became a bar mitzvah. And we were talking about whether it should be such a young kid. He literally became 13 that day, and he was reading Parshas Para. It's like a big, question of whether it's Daraisa or Darabanan, and he was reading it for the community, and there was a whole discussion after. So he wasn't saying like what, when, where, how. He was trying to be very careful, but bringing practical examples and real life examples. So here, he wrote, what did he write? I did not write it. Yehuda the tailor wrote it. He could have just said, I didn't write it. Somebody else did. Like this, you're still exonerating yourself, but you're not mentioning the name of a person. The same applies to many other things that occur frequently. You look at it like, it's a fact. Yehuda wrote it. Okay, but it wasn't a good bill of divorce, and everybody, was talking about how right now it's a problem. So now you attributed it to a particular person, and this is we have to stay with. He's very, very, very careful with how we speak. It's not easy, guys. It's not easy. We're all absolutely challenged with this. So when we look at many other things, as Yidden, we have to be holy. We have to be kaddish, and that's of course Hashem says that you are a nation of priests. You have to sanctify yourself. So we always have to make sure. Okay, you can say a little thing. Here, how about this, guys? You touched your shoe, you touched your shoe, scratched your hair, you came out and people go over to the sink and just, go and say, we're holy. You have to stop. How much longer is it going to take? Especially if you have a cup and a sink and in a shul. Now, Mela, you're on the way somewhere. Okay. If you don't have, so you have a wooden table, you wipe it on. There's different ways around it. You try to do the best you can. But don't always look for the way out, because we have to be holy. And being holy is waking up, washing negavaser, if you have an opportunity to go to the mikvah, v'gam, divrei seifrim, chamurim, divrei Torah, and not just midaraisa, things that say in the Torah, but also rabbinic enactments that are even stricter than the Torah. And they, if anything, we should be more strict with the Rabbanim, because they're going to guard us from violating a Torah law. And all these different things are sins that people trample underfoot. Minor things. Okay, we're going to listen to Zecher Amalek. We're going to hear the Seres HaDibros. Those are important things. Place, we're saying Kiddush, the challahs are covered, and all these different things. You know the famous story. The guy comes in and just put your phone on mute, please, whoever joined, or I'll help you do it. A guy comes in and he sees the challahs are uncovered, and he starts to berate his wife and tell her, you didn't cover the challahs, what are you doing? The guests are here, we're about to make Kiddush. And later on when they're washing, his guest tells him, you think the challahs are more embarrassed than your wife? Like, these are just challahs. So sometimes we're all passionate about the reality of the mitzvah at hand, and we forget about something that's what we consider minor, and here the Tanya is pointing out, we just trample under it. We're insensitive to it. But these are very important things that we have to take it to heart. And sometimes we even say, it's okay. We do it so many times that we think it's okay at this point. It's like convincing yourself of the lie. If a person learns and knows what the Torah wants from him and what Hashem wants from him, and he wants to be close to Hashem, this little tiny thing will become super important to him. He'll make sure that every single detail, if you're going to hand in a paper to your boss and you know that he's going to be scrutinizing that work, whatever that project is, you're going to be very meticulous on how it's done, when it's done, how it's delivered, how it's packaged. Here's the Eibishter, Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You make sure that every single detail of your approach to this project called life is taken care of and not trampled on. Make sure that the little things that you're doing, don't look down at the people that are sitting at the corner. They're far from, wherever they're holding their station in life. Then ashmasom gedola kolkach b'mashe enei koivshim yitzre aber kesh lehova v'prepachad Hashem hamevin omabit el kol maasehem. Their guilt for not summing up the fear of Hashem, who knows and sees all their actions in order to restrain their impulse, which burns like a fiery flame, is not even as bad as a person. Ka'ashmas kol ha'korev el Hashem ve'el teras avadasai. Imagine that person out there. He might not know Torah the way you know Torah. He might not know what Hashem wants from him the way you know what Hashem wants from you. You might be doing certain things that you could look down and say, look what that guy's doing. By the way, don't think about that guy in the market. Think about the guys, this past Shabbos, when people come in, they weren't, who was here Shabbos? Larry. You saw what was going on, right? It was wild. They didn't know the rules. So you're not going to look at them and say, what are you doing? I don't want to say that out loud, but you know what I'm talking about, right? People were doing things that we wouldn't dream of doing on Shabbos, but they don't know any better. But then comes a little thing, and you're like, we'll squeeze out the sponge, we'll do this, something, you'll rip open a pack. Little things like, they're probably minor things, they're not such a big deal. But you know better. And we have to be holy to Hashem. Every single detail counts. Our sages have said, of the apostate Acher, we don't even say his name, Acher. Here we know that his name is Elisha ben Avua, because he knew my glory. Hashem said, if despite this he still sinned, his guilt is far greater. Our sages declared in regard to the illiterate, they don't know any better, that deliberate sins are regarded as inadvertent acts. With a scholar, with somebody who knows better, the reverse is true. An oversight due to lack of study is adjudged as being the gravest sin and deliberate. So his failure to restrain his evil impulse is indeed worse. So Chavra, bottom line is, if we know that it's wrong, we can't take it lightly. If something you don't know, okay, nobody's holding that against you. Actually, ignorance is no excuse. If you don't know, you got to learn. But if you do know, then you have to make sure to take care of it in the best possible way and serve Hashem with all your heart and soul. So the takeaway for today is, do you find it a challenge to thank Hashem and bless him and thank him for everything that he's given you? Look, you don't have to wash, but if you wash, you have to sit down and bench properly. You have to say bracha before the food, and you have to know what bracha to make. Oh, I'm not sure which bracha this is. I'll just say shahako. No good. We have to make time for Torah study, and sometimes a little bit extra time. And we know we know that we have a few extra minutes. You're going to give tzedakah? Okay, give a little bit more. You could do it. Stop from listening to Lashon Hara. It's not easy, but you got to do it. The question is, are we winning our daily battle? And if not, how can we say that we're better than the next person that doesn't know any better? So again, we don't judge others. Yesterday we captioned the clip. Don't judge others just because they sin differently than you. And the fact is, don't judge others no matter what. Whether they sin differently than you, whether they don't sin at all, whether they do sin. Just judge yourself and don't wallow in your misery. Meaning, if you judge yourself, you say, oh yeah, I'm so terrible. That's also not good. You're going to pull yourself down. But we have to make a cheshbon nefesh once in a while. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to build on that. So throughout the day or throughout the week, we have to take stock and say, listen, I know I could do better. I was a little bit weak on this point, and really decide that this is what I'm going to do going forward and build on that and continue to grow higher and higher and higher. There's no end, because we'll never reach the top, because the Eibishter is limitless. So anyways, but we still have to do whatever we can, and our collective efforts will help bring Mashiach now. Amen. Have a good day, everyone.